I'm 30-8 years old, living in Overland Park, Kansas, and I've been married to Eric for 6 years. When we first got together, I was working in operations at a local manufacturing firm and he was in business development. We met during a joint project, then started dating right after. He seemed perfect minus smart, confident, with these big ambitious plans. I fell for him hard and fast. About a year into our marriage, I made what I now realize was my first major mistake. Eric convinced me to leave my job because he said he needed help with his real estate work. He was flipping houses with his mother, Charlene, and at the time, it felt like we were building something together as a family. But from the very beginning, I never really felt like I belonged in their world. Charlene made absolutely sure of that. Charlene has always been ice cold. She's one of those women who smiles with her lips but never with her eyes. Always perfectly dressed, always silently judging everything you do. At family dinners, she'd make these cutting remarks like some people are meant to manage, others are meant to follow. Once, she looked me dead in the eye and said, Eric needs someone with vision, not someone stuck in a 9-year-olds to -5 mindset. And Eric, he never once defended me. If anything, he'd just shrug and say, that's just how she is. When our first tax season as a married couple rolled around, Charlene offered to handle our taxes. I hesitated minus something felt off about it minus, but Eric insisted she knew what she was doing. He said she used to help his father with taxes and did them for several people she knew. I figured it would be fine. I didn't ask enough questions. I didn't even look at the actual returns. Charlene would just say everything was filed correctly, and we'd sign whatever she put in front of us. Every single year after that, the same routine. I try to ask questions sometimes, but they'd brush me off immediately. Too complicated, Charlene would say dismissively. Don't worry your pretty little head about it. And Derek would always back her up, it's handled. Just let it go. I regret every single time I stayed quiet and went along with it. This year was different though. I started getting more curious about our finances. I wanted to apply for a small credit card under my own name, just something separate for emergencies. When I applied, I got denied immediately. That didn't make any sense minus my credit had always been decent. So I pulled a credit report, and that's when I found something that made my blood run cold. There was a business loan under my name for a company I'd never heard of minus Dane Walker Consulting Services. That's my name, but I had never started any business ever. I brought it up to Eric immediately. He looked annoyed, not surprised. It's just a paperwork thing, he said casually. My mom used her name to get better rates on some deals. That hit me like a punch to the gut. She had used my name, my identity, without ever telling me. It's all in the family, he said, like that somehow made my death perfectly acceptable. You're acting like we robbed a bank or something. We had a massive argument. I told him I didn't want Charlene touching our taxes anymore. He rolled his eyes at me. You don't even know what you're looking at, he said condescending. My mom does this stuff better than anyone. But for once in my life, I stood my ground. I said I wanted a real professional, someone actually licensed. He didn't say much after that, just walked away from me. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the IRS that changed everything. It was addressed only to me minus not both of us, just me. It said I owed $40 minus $2,000 in back taxes. The letter claimed I had been filing as a self-employed consultant for 3 years, taking business deductions and reporting income I'd never actually made. There were penalty charges, interest fees, and warnings about potential criminal action. I stared at that letter for what felt like forever. My stomach completely dropped, and I started shaking. I went straight to Eric with the letter in my hand and said, "What the hell is this?" He barely even glanced at it. "You never really understood money," he said dismissively. "It's just a misunderstanding. Let my mom handle it." I completely lost it. I told him this wasn't okay, that I wasn't going to take the fall for whatever scheme they were running. Then my phone rang. It was Charlene. Her voice was cold and threatening. "Dana, you're being emotional as usual. Maybe this will finally teach you something important. Actions have consequences, and you're about to learn what real ones feel like." I hung up on her immediately. The next morning, I found a tax attorney named Larry Mendelson. My old coworker had recommended him highly. I brought him the IRS letter and every document I could find. He sat there quietly, flipping through everything with this increasingly serious expression on his face. Then he pulled out a copy of our tax return from the previous year. It had my name, my social security number, my supposed business income, and what looked like my signature. Except I hadn't signed it. I'd never even seen it before. I looked at the signature carefully. It was close to mine, but it wasn't actually mine. It was a copy, a forgery. Larry leaned back in his chair and said grimly, "This is serious fraud. Whoever did this committed multiple federal crimes, and they did it using your identity." I started crying right there in his office. I felt stupid, betrayed, and furious all at the same time. Larry told me exactly what I needed to do: file an identity theft report with the IRS, notify all the credit bureaus, freeze every joint account we had, and demand full copies of every tax return filed since I'd married Derek. The IRS opened an official investigation within days. I filed for legal separation a week after that. Eric was absolutely furious. He screamed at me in our driveway, saying I was ruining our entire life over a bunch of paperwork. He called me ungrateful and said I was destroying the family. I told him I didn't care anymore, minus I was done protecting him and Charlene from the consequences of their own crimes. When the IRS started asking serious questions, Charlene tried to play innocent. She told them I had agreed to everything, claimed I just forgot signing the documents, said I had willingly participated in the whole scheme. But there was one problem with her story, minus they didn't have my original signatures. They had copies, scanned versions that could be easily forged. And when they pulled the IP addresses showing where the documents had been filed from, everything traced directly back to Charlene's house. Then it got so much worse. Larry helped me pull our complete financial records going back for years. Over that entire period, Charlene and Eric had used that fake consulting business to claim thousands in fraudulent deductions minus home upgrades, flights, a car, even designer clothes. All of it written off as business expenses under my name for a business that didn't exist. Then we found the business loan minus $80,000 taken out using my social security number. That money had been used for a house flip that completely failed. They lost every penny of it, and I had no idea any of it existed. Larry was stunned. "They set this whole thing up years ago," he said. "You were always meant to be the fall person." I felt physically sick. I immediately froze everything minus bank accounts, credit cards, all of it. I moved out of our house and got a P.O. box for my mail. Larry filed an official complaint with the IRS Criminal Division, and we also submitted everything to the Kansas Attorney General's office. Eric kept calling and texting, telling me I was blowing everything up for no reason, saying I was being brainwashed by outside influences. At one point, he even sent me flowers with a note that said, "We can fix this. You just have to stop talking to lawyers." I didn't respond to any of it. But Charlene started calling my family members, telling them I was mentally unstable and trying to destroy Eric out of pure spite. I told my family the entire truth, showed them all the evidence, and thankfully, they believed me completely. The IRS launched a full audit into Charlene's activities. Larry said we might have a strong case for restitution and damages, depending on how deep their fraud went. Turns out, it went much deeper than we'd imagined. Charlene had done this exact same thing before to Eric's cousin years earlier. But that cousin had been too scared to report it officially. Now, hearing about my case, she came forward too. I realized then that I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was about to blow up Charlene's entire criminal operation, and I wasn't going to stop until every victim got justice. About a month after the audit started, things escalated quickly. I was staying in a short term rental because Larry advised me not to go back to the house minus. We needed to keep everything clean in case Eric tried to claim I'd tampered with evidence. I'd had my name removed from all the utilities and filed a temporary restraining order against him. But Eric wasn't letting go easily. One night around 2 a.m, I woke up to someone banging violently on my front door. I looked through the peephole and saw Eric. He looked drunk and desperate. He was shouting my name, slurring his words. "Open the door, Dana. We can fix this. You don't have to do this to me." I called the police immediately, but by the time they arrived, he was gone. They took a report but didn't arrest him, saying it was a domestic issue and he hadn't actually damaged anything. The next morning, I found my tire slashed. Eric denied it, saying maybe someone in the neighborhood did it. I got a security camera installed that same day. A week later, Larry called with major news. He sounded extremely serious. "They've frozen Charlene's assets," he said. "The IRS thinks she's been running fraudulent tax returns for other people too, all under their names without their knowledge. One of them is pressing criminal charges." I didn't even know what to say. Turns out, Charlene had been operating this scheme for years, filing fake small business deductions under other people's names and identities. Most of them never caught it because she'd give them small refunds and tell them they were saving thousands in taxes. Several of her victims were elderly, and one had dementia. She'd been using vulnerable people just like she'd used me. Charlene started panicking. She called me from a different phone number and left a voicemail offering to pay me money to walk away from the case. That voicemail went straight to Larry as evidence. Then the local media got wind of the story. A news station ran a piece titled "Kansas Woman Accused of Tax Fraud Scheme Involving Family Members." Charlene's name and face were everywhere. Pictures of her at charity events and in front of expensive homes now paired with headlines about embezzlement, fake businesses, and federal crimes. Within 40-8 hours, she lost her seat on the city's beautification board. The country club sent her a letter saying her membership was under review. The real estate office she co-owned completely locked her out. Charlene tried desperately to control the narrative. She hired a PR firm and started claiming I gone Rogan was trying to frame her because I was jealous of her success. She even went on a local radio show and said I was mentally unstable and being manipulated by outside forces. But I had proof. Mountains of proof. Emails, text messages, forged signatures, detailed spreadsheets, bank records, and thanks to Eric's sister Michelle, the complete QuickBooks files that showed everything they'd been doing. But here's the part that really knocked the wind out of me. Larry called with something he hadn't told me yet. "Dana," he said carefully, "Eric signed something last year minus a document that named you as the personal guarantor on that business loan." "What does that mean?" I asked, though I was already dreading the answer. "It means if they default on the loan, you're legally on the hook for the entire amount." I almost threw up right there. But then he continued, "However, we now have proof that your signature on that document was forged. And now that we have handwriting experts involved in the case, it's looking like Eric personally signed her name on several legal documents, including loan paperwork." It was so much worse than I'd thought. Not only had Charlene been using my name for fraudulent tax returns for years, all of it in my name, all of it linked to my social security number. He hadn't just let Charlene commit fraud minus, he'd been actively helping her do it. I told Larry I wanted to press full criminal charges against both of them. Then I got an unexpected call from Eric's sister Michelle. We'd never been particularly close minus she lived out in Wichita and usually stayed out of family drama. She said she wanted to meet me for coffee. I almost said no, but something told me I should go. When we met, she looked nervous and uncomfortable. "I've been staying quiet because I didn't want to get involved in family business," she said. "But I can't stay silent anymore. I found something you need to see." She slid a USB drive across the table to me. It's their QuickBooks files from Charlene's laptop. I copied them while I was visiting last month. I think it shows exactly what they've been doing to you. I gave the USB drive to Larry the same day, and it completely blew the case wide open. Inside were detailed notes, spreadsheets, scanned signatures, and even email conversations between Charlene and Derek where they discussed keeping Dana quiet and pushing it one more year. There was one message from Eric that felt like getting stabbed in the heart. It said as long as she doesn't ask to see the actual tax returns, we're fine. She's not going to leave me. She doesn't have it in her. Reading that, I realized they had built this entire criminal scheme on their belief that I was too weak, too loyal, too scared to ever fight back. They'd counted on my silence and compliance to get away with stealing my identity for years. Now I had everything I needed to destroy them completely, and I wasn't stopping for anything. 2 weeks after Michelle gave me the USB drive, Larry brought in a forensic accountant named Denise. She was thorough and relentless, combing through everything minus Charlene's fraudulent tax returns, Eric's QuickBooks records, and all the bank transfers tied to the fake business. After a week of analysis, Denise sat across from me in Larry's office and said something that stopped me cold. "There's a second fake business. Not in your name, not in Eric's name either. It's registered under your sister's identity. My sister Amanda lives in Des Moines. We're not particularly close minus, we talk maybe once or twice a year, mostly on birthdays and holidays. She doesn't even know Charlene personally." Denise turned her laptop toward me and showed me a consulting LLC registered to Amanda Walker. It used my parents' old address, had the same EIN pattern Charlene had used for my fake business, the same type of fraudulent deductions, and the same signature style. "Are you saying they used my sister's name too?" I asked, feeling sick. "Yes," Denise confirmed. And probably without her knowledge, just like they did to you. They didn't stop with just you. I called Amanda right there in the office. She answered confused, and when I explained everything to her, she got very quiet. Then she said, Dana, about a year ago, I got a call from someone who said she was a tax preparer helping your husband with family business filings. She asked me for my social security number. I hung up on her immediately. I never thought to report it because I didn't connect it to Eric at all. I looked at Denise with new understanding. They tried to pull her into the scheme too. She just didn't fall for it like I did. Larry shook his head grimly. This is organized identity fraud on a massive scale. Charlene wasn't making mistakes minus, she was running this like a small minus-scale crime ring. Then another devastating twist emerged. Denise showed us an email from the files, this one from Eric to someone named Jay Henson. It read, we can get out of this clean. She'll fold if we push hard enough. If not, we move the money to the Arizona account. It's still in her name anyway. Larry's expression changed immediately. Arizona account? You don't have any connections to Arizona, do you? No, I said. I've never even been to Arizona in my life. Denise kept digging and traced it down. There was a shell account set up at a credit union in Mesa, Arizona, with over $60,000 in it. It had been established under my name and social security number, with deposits traced directly from Eric's real estate business. There were recent withdrawals to mine as Eric had been using it to hide and move money around. When I'd frozen our joint accounts, he started pulling from the secret Arizona account instead. He'd been moving stolen money through an account I didn't even know existed. It hit me that he probably planned for me to take the fall again if anything went wrong. He could tell the IRS that I'd opened the account, that it was my secret business, that I was the one hiding income. Just like he'd done with everything else. They were setting me up for a second round of fraud charges while planning their escape. That's when I completely lost it. I told Larry I wanted to take this to court, both civil and criminal. I wanted them both to answer for every forged document, every lie, every threat they'd made. I wanted the whole thing to be completely public. I didn't care how messy it got. Eric and Charlene had turned my entire life into an elaborate trap, but now they were running out of places to hide. The final twist came when Michelle called me again. She said Eric had suddenly emptied his personal savings accounts and left town without telling anyone. Charlene was telling the rest of the family that he was taking some time to get his head on straight, but Michelle didn't believe it for a second. She checked his location through a shared family tracking app they all used. He was in Arizona. Larry said quietly, he's going to try to drain that account before we can freeze it. But now that we've flagged it with the authorities, I replied, the IRS will be waiting for him. So there I was, sitting and waiting. I'd started this journey thinking I just needed help with a tax problem. Now I was building a federal case that was about to take down the people who thought they were smarter than everyone else, who thought they could use me and throw me away without consequences. I wasn't done with them. I was just getting started. Eric didn't make it very far at all. 2 days after Michelle told me he was in Arizona, the IRS froze the account completely. They'd already flagged the routing number once Denise traced all the suspicious deposits. Eric walked into a branch in Mesa trying to withdraw $20,000. They let him get as far as the counter, then 2 federal agents walked up behind him and asked, "Are you Eric Walker?" He said yes. They said, "You're under investigation for federal fraud and identity theft." They handcuffed him right there in the bank. Charlene wasn't arrested that same day, but she might as well have been. The news broke that same afternoon, Kansas real estate duo under federal investigation for fraudulent tax scheme. Local TV stations ran with the story immediately. Her face was everywhere, minus pictures of her smiling in front of expensive homes and at charity events, now paired with headlines about embezzlement, fake businesses, and federal crimes. Within 40-8 hours, she'd lost her seat on the city's beautification board. The country club sent her a letter saying her membership was under review. The real estate office Chico- owned locked her out completely. Charlene tried desperately to control the damage. She hired a PR firm and started claiming I'd gone rogue and was trying to frame her because I was jealous of her success. She went on a local radio show and said I was mentally unstable and being manipulated by outside forces who wanted to destroy her reputation. But I had overwhelming proof. Emails, text messages, forged signatures, detailed spreadsheets, bank records, and thanks to Michelle, those complete QuickBooks files that showed everything they'd been planning and executing for years. The IRS pressed formal federal charges. Then the state of Kansas got involved and filed identity theft and fraud charges. The Arizona Attorney General followed with their own charges minus turns out they have specific laws against out minus of minus state residents using Arizona accounts to commit fraud. Charlene was arrested exactly 1 week after Eric. Her mugshot hit the local news the very next day. And here's where my complete revenge finally landed. Charlene's trial moved quickly because the evidence was so overwhelming. The prosecution methodically laid out how she'd forged tax returns under my name, stolen social security numbers from multiple family members, and funneled money through fake businesses for years. She tried to claim that I'd given her permission for everything, that I knew exactly what was happening the whole time. But our own emails and text messages proved otherwise. The jury came back and just for ours guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to 8 years in state prison with no parole for the first 4 years. She was also fined $150,000 in restitution and permanently barred from any type of financial work for life. She was 60 minus 2 years old when she went in. By the time she gets out, everything she spent decades building will be completely gone. Eric's trial took longer because he tried to pin most of the blame on his mother. He claimed he'd been pressured and manipulated, said he didn't know the loans were fraudulent. But then the court saw those messages where he told Charlene she won't leave me. She doesn't have it in her. The same court saw the forged signatures on the business loan documents, the Arizona bank withdrawals, and the email where he said, "Let her take the hit for everything." He was found guilty on all counts too. He was sentenced to 11 years minus 7 federal and for state, to be served consecutively, not concurrently. He was also fined for $100,000. And because he'd fraudulently named me as a personal guarantor on that business loan, the bank went after him with a separate civil lawsuit. They won easily. He lost everything minus his business license, his real estate license, all his investors, and now his freedom. I got the house in the divorce settlement, but I didn't keep it. I sold it immediately and used the money to pay my lawyer, the forensic accountant, and to start completely fresh somewhere new. But here's the final piece of my revenge. With Larry's help, I filed a massive civil lawsuit against both Charlene and Derek for identity theft, emotional distress, and financial damages. The court awarded me $1.2 million, mostly from assets the IRS had seized from their properties and frozen accounts. And I didn't stop there. I started speaking to women's groups about financial abuse and identity fraud within marriages. I told my complete story to the same news outlets that Charlene used to brag to about her success. I named names, showed documents, laid out exactly how they'd done it. People listened, and they shared my story. Michelle and I talk regularly now. She apologized for not stepping in sooner, but I told her she'd save me when it counted most. She helped take them down even if she came in late to the fight. Amanda's credit was completely restored. The fake business registered under her name was erased from all records, and she filed her own claim against Charlene for attempted identity theft. She's still furious about what they tried to do to her, but she's healing. And me? I got a job again, back in operations where I belonged. I have my own apartment, my own money, my own life. And I will never, ever sign another document without reading every single line and understanding exactly what it means. I was naive for years. I let people walk all over me and control my life. But when it finally came time to fight back, I didn't hesitate for a second. They thought I wouldn't do anything, that I'd just take whatever they threw at me. They were completely wrong. And now they have years and years behind bars to think about just how wrong they were about me.